Welcome to the Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar series. Good morning. I'm Lawrence Geller, the founder of ForAdvisorsOnly.com. This is the 18th of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who've dedicated their careers to learning the art and science of insurance sales and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through the end of this year, and more are being added to the schedule daily. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent whom I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field, deal with similar clients, and even if they are related or in business together. This is what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance so that some of their expertise and experience will be available to anyone who'd like to learn from them. Today, we have Susan Creasy with us. A graduate of Queen's University, Susan joined the life insurance industry in 1980. Today, she owns Susan Creasy Financial Inc., a financial planning firm located in Kingston, Ontario. Throughout her career, Susan has been held in high regard by her peers in the life insurance industry and elsewhere. In 1997, she was the first Canadian to be recognized by the Life and Health Insurance Foundation for education, for outstanding professionalism, and concern for her clients' financial security. Susan is also past chair of the board of directors of the MDRT Canadian Charitable Foundation. She's a member of CALU and has spoken at numerous industry conferences. Much of Susan's success can be attributed to her entrepreneurial spirit. She is innovative, creative, and open to new ideas. She has excellent relationship building skills. Clients choose to do business with Sue primarily because of the level of trust she develops with them. And that trust is reflected in the 2 and 3 generations of families that are in her client base. Susan has been awarded the Outstanding Volunteer Fundraiser Award, the Jim Bennett Award, and in 2012, Sue was presented with the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal to honor her significant contributions to the Kingston community. In 2009, Sue was inducted into the Kingston Business Hall of Fame as a mentor and leader. The Kingston Chamber of Commerce selected Susan as their Business Person of the Year in 2007. In 2023, Sue resigned from the role as chair of the University Hospitals Capital Campaign after raising another $80 million for hospital redevelopment. She continues in her role as past chair, raising money for healthcare in her community. As chair of the University Hospital Kingston Foundation campaign, she raised $65 million in just 3 years for major capital projects at Kingston area hospitals. Susan and Tim have 2 children, Rebecca and Jack, and are the proud grandparents of 2 boys, Nolan, age 7, and Hayden, who's 4. Julian Wise will be interviewing Sue. We've now booked interviews through the end of October 2024, with dates now being added regularly. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Julian.
Thanks, Lawrence. And Sue Creasy, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. And thank you so much for participating, Sue.
A pleasure.
Why don't we start with, how did you get started in this business and why?
In the early, late 70s, I had a job that I had the opportunity, to work in with the Ministry of Culture and Recreation. I was in between my graduating year at Queen's University in phys ed and my year at MacArthur for Teachers College. And I had worked a couple of summers in the provincial government office for the Ministry of Culture and Recreation. And in my year between university and Teachers College, I was given the consulting role to manage all of the programs that the provincial government funded in Eastern Ontario So my territory of being a supervisor for all of these individual municipal recreation programs went from sort of Cornwall to Trenton, Peterborough, Smith Falls, that sort of Prince Edward County. And I was independent, worked hard, traveled a lot on a daily basis, was responsible for a few $1 million of a budget at that time. And I really liked that kind of independent advisory role and saw myself as that sort of a direction. There were no teaching jobs when I graduated from MacArthur, certainly in this area. So, and my first husband, David, was doing a PhD at Queen's. We bought a house, so mobility wasn't really a choice. So I liked that idea. I pursued a career for a short period of time at the YMCA, and then answered an ad for one of the insurance companies for a marketing management position, which I knew really nothing about the life insurance industry. So anyway, May 5th of 1980, I joined one of the major insurance companies.
Wow. And what helped you the most to grow in the business at the early stages of your career?
Well, in the early days, we had we had a lot of opportunities to mentor with other brokers from other companies. You'll recall, Julian, that we had life underwriters training programs. And so there would be a classroom kind of environment with people from all different life companies in agency offices at the time in Kingston. And then we would be invited to the head offices for, an estate planning school or a disability insurance school. And so we would go and meet, and that's when I had the opportunity of meeting some of the greats in our business, the Toby Halls, the Tom McQuillans, that came in and did presentations for us. And that really gave me a lot of opportunity to pick other people's brains. Then I qualified for Rep MDRT. And of course, that's just another opportunity to meet people and share ideas as you go along in your career. So I think that ability to learn from others was one of the big things for me.
And what are the most important things that you did as a new advisor way back then? Well, not that far back. But.
Well, I had my time at the Y allowed me to, because I'm not a Kingston child, born in Kingston. I grew up in Toronto. But I developed a volunteer program for the Y. And when I left, there were 450 volunteer instructors, whether it was fitness or swimming or whatever, assisting in programming at the YMCA here in Kingston. And that allowed me to meet a lot of people that weren't necessarily people I would know otherwise. And so I would go to them and say, they knew me and they liked me. And they said, at the time we had these little TVs and it had a little video on it that you could say, look, I'd like to show you this financial planning video. It'll take 5 minutes of your time. And would you be available next Wednesday or Thursday? And a lot of the time I would go to their home. Kingston's not that huge a community that's not a problem. And that sort of got me going. And ever since, I've always worked on referrals. I probably am not a particularly good cold caller. I'm happy to call people and ask them for money for the hospital, but I'm not very good at cold calling per se. And I never really had to do it because I was a very good fact finder. I was a very good prospector and a good networker.
So you would say those are your unique abilities. What other unique abilities do you have?
Well, I think something else that would be is, I say that, and I've probably heard this at roundtable, people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And I do care about my clients and their families. I know a lot about them and I know a lot about the industry, but it's the soft touches that show that you care. It's the picking up the phone and saying, how are you doing after that surgery? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? It's not about business. It's about a personal relationship.
And how did education play a role in your development?
Well, I did the life underwriters training. I did CLU. And of course, in those days, we all had classes. It's all online now. And then I would go to home office schools and I would continue to learn. And I go to CALU. I've been to CALU for many, many years. And so learning is learning from environments and speakers, but it's also self-learning and putting yourself in committees and positions of volunteer that you can bring in skills that you learn and then can reproduce into your business.
So what did the business look like when you started compared to today?
Well, when I started, I, like Michelle Wilson, did the Project 100 of the 100 people, you know, and I used the Granum system for tracking my activities, and I'm pretty task oriented, so that worked well for me. It allowed me to follow up with who I was not meeting, and I was always told when I started in this business, if you do 2 sales a week, you'll never fail. 100 lives a year. Because it doesn't matter what size, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be investment product, DI, life. But if you have the activity, you will never fail in the business.
And how has your methodology changed over time?
So Julian, in 2002, my first husband, David, passed away in 2001 very suddenly of an undiagnosed heart attack. And I had 2 kids at home with me, age 13 and 16. And I did qualify for the insurance company conference that I was licensed with at the time. And I heard a speaker, Bob Davies, who was at the conference speaking. And much like the Dan Sullivan coaching information, I thought, you know what, I need to connect with this guy and get a bit of a kick to get going, because I was on a plateau. Business was good. I was doing court of the table, but I wanted to push forward a bit, and it was a good distraction from losing a spouse, to have something to focus on and do. And I worked with Bob until he unfortunately died in a parachute accident about 6 years ago. And I did coaching, and so it's similar, you know, it's back to the old tracking and accountability. And I would commit to doing things, and I would do them. And I had centers of influence that for me were excellent right from the beginning. I've had lawyers and accountants who ended up being clients, who were good friends, who would send me business. I would send them business. I would do events for them and bring in a speaker from one of the head offices of the insurance companies to be some, you know, to inform them of something that was relative to their business as well as mine. And I often was on the lookout for material that I could take to them and say, here, you know, for example, here's how you can do interest beneficiary designations on life insurance policies that may work better than doing something in the will per se. So I would always try and go, if I was meeting them for lunch, just to give them some value added, something that they could take back to their practice.
Thank you, Sue. Sue, Dave died, and how did that event affect you as an insurance professional?
Well, I can tell you, I think I'm a firm believer. I had delivered death claims prior to that. But never did I expect at 46 to be doing that for my spouse. It recommitted to me. And Dave was well insured. In fact, 6 months before he died, he was doing a lot of traveling. He had a waste management consulting business and was involved with the Walkerton and Cryo. He was the key consultant for that at the time. And I said to him, you know, you're on the road. You've got a lot of invoices. A lot of it was could have been government work, and the government takes 6 months to pay. And I said, you know, really, we've still got young family. We should bump up the coverage. And we did. And he, you know, he had no issues 6 months before. So I financially was fine, perfectly fine. And I sort of say in my book that I wrote, I practiced what I preach. And, we had no debt. We had 2 cottage property. I bought my office building. He had a lot of insurance. We had significant amounts in our RSPs at the time. And so I just, I really feel I practice what I preach, and I can talk to people about. And in the first chapter, as I say in my book, which is online, if somebody wants to go to our company website, they can read the book online. And it gave me a level of commitment and confidence that, if somebody said, well, I don't believe in life insurance, and I'd say, well, it's not a religion, and here's what happened. And if you had been me, would you say you didn't want that check? And so it gave me a lot of confidence in our business and what we do, and reaffirmed that what we do is critical for our clients.
Thanks, Sue. Sue, can you give us your company website so that people can access your book?
If they Google Susan Creasy Financial Inc., it'll pop right up.
Okay, great.
Or www.susancreasy.ca. But it'll pop right up on a Google search.
Thank you. Sue, how after Dave died did you balance work and family? You had 2 children, Rebecca and Jack. What was important to you?
So they were important to me. I tried to make sure that I was home. They left on the bus about 7:30 for high. Jack would have been in public school, so I guess he was still at 9 o'clock or at 8:45 on the bus. Becca was earlier. And then coming home, she would be home around 3:30, and he would be home shortly after. So I really focused on making sure that I was home when they came home, and I was there when they left. And I would do a little bit of work at home at night, but clients understand, and you just say to them, I'm sorry, I have to be home for my children. Once they grew up and went off and went to university, my time was a little more flexible, obviously. But
thank you. What are your thoughts on the business and how it's changed over time?
well, I think we have a massive amount of product information, and I see our jobs as trying to inform clients but keep it simple, because we can make things so complicated, and it doesn't have to be. I'm a big, I guess from my teaching background, I draw pictures, I draw diagrams, and sort of talk about in estate planning how everything you own goes into a funnel, but there's a chute out the side. And that's where the beneficiary designations for life insurance and seg funds and GICs with insurance companies. And that's why that can go to a beneficiary, and not through the will, and not through probate, and not delays, and not fees. And I give them I photocopy what I've drawn, because I keep a copy in my file for them, but they understand it. And the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I just think we have to make sure that we give people sufficient data to be able to make a good decision. We do our homework behind the scene to be sure that the recommendations we're making are correct and appropriate. And then I think it's easier for them to do it. I'm not a big internet girl. I do research on the internet, but I have clients who, if they want to do all this research of information and whatever on their own on the internet, then go ahead. But I'm happy to have a conversation with them about it. But I think the internet has changed our business a bit, Julian. But I think people still, our best clients still want to know, what do you think? Sue, what do you think? Does this make any sense?
Is there a particular group of people that you decided to prospect in order to grow your business, or tell us more about it?
Yeah, I don't. I have.
How do you do it? How do you do it?
I have a mixed practice, Julian. Kingston's a small community, so maybe 150,000 people within the perimeter. So I have some corporate clients. I have some group insurance clients. I have some professional clients that are doctors or dentists or accountants. And then I've got many family clients and grandma, mom and dad, and now kids in their 20s. So there's 3 generations of families, and it's predominantly by referral. It's the lawyers and accountants I might have met through my networking. Some of the docs I met through my volunteer work at the hospital. So all those little centers of, I call them centers of influence. If you drew a wagon wheel, I go back to my diagrams, and you put circles of clusters of where you know people, like the Cataraqui Golf Club, the Kingston General Hospital volunteer roles. My networking, I was involved for many, many years. It's now not so active, but Kingston Women's Network. And it was women from all business areas, could be sales, management, individual business women. And we would get together. There might be 40 or 50 of us. We'd get together, we'd have dinner. Sometimes we brought a speaker in, sometimes we just had a couple of people, members, stand up and share 5 minutes about who they are and what they do. And so if you have all those pockets of sources of people to know, and they get to know you and you get to know them. I golf, I'm an avid golfer, and so I would play in lots of golf tournaments, charity tournaments specifically, and I sponsor things. And so that's another way of meeting people, aside from your own personal, I curl, I golf in the summer, so there's, networks there. Or curl in the winter, sorry, golf in the summer. But yeah, I've always been very good at getting myself into groups so that people end up coming to me and saying they know me first, and then they want my advice second.
That's interesting question. What role has $1 Million Roundtable played in your life? How has it helped you grow? And are you still as committed to it as you once were?
$1 Million, I am still a member of the $1 Million Roundtable. I have not gone to a meeting in the recent sort of couple of years, probably since COVID or pre-COVID. Tim and I did do a number of top of the table meetings and enjoyed it. I think that my practice, $1 Million Roundtable when I was younger and in my mid career, shall I say, opened a lot of ideas and opportunities and showed me different ways to do it. I'm now sort of at a level where I find that I like the KLU conferences because it gives me more technical updates and information. But I still will, and I am involved in the Abacus webinars and the CE stuff for that. But I think MDRT has been, it played a place, I guess, with my coaching in moving me from this level to this level. And in terms of my production and my confidence and my career.
And what kinds of things did you and Bob do together that moved you up several levels?
So we set business plans yearly. I still do. And I still do some of his coaching. I take what I think I need to do. He encouraged me to write a book, which I did. And it was, common sense answers to everyday questions. I took a chapter on somebody'd say to me, well, why do I need a will? So I do that. And I had one of my lawyer colleagues proof the legal part. And I had one of my accounting colleagues proof the accounting conversations. But, time and money investing and ladder of risk and just things that we would use every day in a conversation, explaining things to clients. And he pushed me to do it. I published 2,000. I gave them away. I never sold one. But I used them in when I would do a seminar. It gives you a little bit of a level of credibility. I've used them with clients and giving them to clients and saying, here, this will help you answer a number. Why would you want to use seg funds for estate planning? Read this. It'll give you a little bit of a basic. It's not hard. It's not Reader's Digest, but it's not much more complicated. And it's short, quick chapters, and take it with you. And it's been passed around. Somebody will say, oh, I gave that book to my daughter, or to my niece, or to my brother. So that was one of the things. Bob pushed me to do that. I don't know that I would have done it otherwise. He was a big believer in writing, and so I still to this day write once a month an article in our Kingston This Week local newspaper. I have an ad space, so I pay for the ad space, and then I have the article inside the ad space. And that's been very successful. Again, 450 words maybe, but I just did one on why life insurance is a great solution for the capital gains on your cottage.
That's timely.
Yeah, right. So I do, and people read it. Like, it's a free little newspaper that's circulated in the community. And why are insurance company GICs better than the bank GICs? What are the advantages of them? Yeah. And so they'll come in and they'll say, I've sold my house. I want to invest with you because I read the article in Kingston This Week about not all GICs are the same. So that was one. Writing is something that Bob pushed me to do. Challenging myself more to get to the top of the table was something he encouraged me to do. We have very good data tracking systems in the office as to what cases are open and what do I need to go back to. And I keep a list of prospects that I've seen. We follow those up if we haven't heard back from them. I have a great staff, and that really makes life important because they keep me on track, and we do weekly staff meetings, conversations. I do my planning for my appointments on a weekly basis and look at everything that's going on in the office and who's doing what. So he taught me a lot of those good things and pushed me a bit. Speaking was something else he was very adamant about, and I did a number of seminars, and particularly a fair number on retirement planning for Queen's University employees at the time. And so I don't do as much of that anymore, Julian. I'm not as much now at my stage in life of growing the business. And Bob would always say to me, how big is enough? And I think I've come to the thought that I'm as big as I need to be size-wise for clients and money assets under administration. And I'm really just enjoying now being a grandmother. I'm enjoying golfing twice a week in the summer, during Tuesday afternoons, Friday mornings. My staff, we shut the office at noon on every Friday from the middle of May to Labor Day, just paid afternoon off on a Friday. And so, we work hard and we play hard. And I just think he really helped me to focus and pinpoint what I was committed to do. And he was a great one at following up and saying, you said you were doing this, have you done it? So I knew he would do that. So therefore I had to do it, right?
So tell me about your staff, how many people you have and what they do to support you.
So I have 2 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff. And Marianne handles all the new business work and the follow-ups with insurance companies and the tracking of commissions paid and outstanding items on cases that underwriters might need. My brother David, who's with me, is 10 years younger than I am, and he is licensed, but he does he will do sales if So if we need, he's very good on the computer, so he's doing a lot of the e-apps, for the electronic apps for me, and digital signature stuff. And he does a lot of the office admin, so the follow-ups for clients with changes of beneficiaries, pack changes, that kind of stuff. And then I have a part-time gal, Sue, who comes in at least once, maybe twice a week as needed, to do filing and to do sort of the basic admin stuff. She's fabulous at creating wine baskets. If I commit to giving a wine basket away for a charitable silent auction, I go out and buy the wine and she puts it all together and it looks fabulous. So, we just work well as a team, and it is a good team, and we have some fun too. So I think that's important.
How long have they been with you, Sue?
Well, Marianne was she was the office manager at the insurance company I started at in 1980. She was actually the new business manager, and then she was promoted to office manager. And then in the late 90s, when the insurance companies closed their agency offices and we went to the brokerage system with MGAs, she came and joined me here at the office. But she's actually been in the business probably a year longer than I have.
Wow.
And David's been with me to 25 years roughly. And Sue, our part-time person's been probably 5 or 6 years.
They certainly must feel valued then, mustn't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what role has Kalu played in your life?
Well, Kalu has helped me to keep the technical side of our business going, in terms of keeping me updated on the industry and what's happening. And of course, Michelle Wilson, because you interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. She and I and Cindy Bowden have all been great friends for years, and we are in a study group together. And so we do spend a lot of time together at Kalu, and we meet lots of opportunities to meet other brokers and see how other people are doing it. It's an opportunity to network with a number of our old friends, such as you, who we might have seen over the years at conferences and things, but now those aren't necessarily happening or happening to the same level. So it's an opportunity to network, learn. I always come home with an idea that I've written down that I can put into practice.
So one idea makes it worth your while, does it?
Yep.
Good. So what do you do in your study groups? Are you in one study group or more? Or
I'm in the just one with the girls. We had a greater number of folk in it, and some have retired from the business. Some are, have gone other ways and directions. But right now it's just Cindy, Michelle, and myself, and we put together an agenda as to what we're studying and what we want to talk about. And there's no limit to what's on the table. We meet twice a year. The winter months, I come to, Cindy and Michelle are in Toronto, so I come to Toronto in usually sometime in January, February, and then the summer, Michelle and Cindy come to my cottage, where we'll work on a Thursday afternoon and a Friday morning. We bring in a speaker, so we've had an opportunity, because we have an insurance company head office here in Kingston, to have a sit-down one-on-one or three-on-one with the chief underwriter or one of the major investment people in the company, or we're bringing somebody in from Toronto to speak to us about seg funds and where they see the industry going and the markets. So it's been a really great opportunity. We do talk about family. We all know each other's family. Our kids, certainly Michelle's children and my children know each other over the years. So it's great. And I would encourage anybody to get, and I know they're part of your study group too.
yeah, both of them.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable. It allows you to bounce off ideas about whatever topic with other people who are like-minded and in a similar industry. So I think if I was to give advice to anyone in the business, if you haven't got a study group, try and get one. Try and put one together and keep it simple. You don't have to be renting big ballrooms to do it. You know, you can meet at a restaurant, you can have a lunch study group, take one idea and go to lunch.
How many people do you think make a really good sized study group?
Well, ours is a bit small, and we're conscious of that. I think if you have more than 10, it maybe gets too complicated. But you know, I think if you can get 6, 8, we were at 7 or 8 at one point. If you have 20 people, you don't really get a chance to, in a shorter period of time, a day or a day and a half, to really get into any good conversation.
So Michelle asked me to ask her this question, and I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Any comments on this being a good or bad career choice for women?
Well, I think it's a great career choice. I have absolutely no regrets as being in this business, and I certainly Michelle and and Cindy were one of the few early women in the business, and I can remember going to round table and there never be a lineup in the ladies' washroom, but there always was in the men's. And so I think that we have opportunities. I think we can say things that maybe sometimes men can't say, in terms of, and we can relate to husbands and wives and spouses. And I know a number of times with some of my clients that they were never used to telling their wife anything about their finances. And I said, well, that just doesn't make any sense, because if you're not here, what you gonna do? So I said, you know, they all should be at the kitchen table. If we're having a conversation, they're all in the boardroom. But I think it's a fabulous career for women. And you know, I'm not any brighter than any other person. I'm not any smarter than any other woman or man, but I think it offers us the flexibility when our families are young to sort of tailor our day. I used to phone Monday nights when I was first in the business, and I would stay from 5 to 7 in the agency office or in my office and do my phoning for the week or for the next week. And then it's done. But you know, you can still be home for dinner. You don't need to work every weekend. I rarely work on a weekend, maybe the odd time on an RSP season, but for the most part, no. But on the other hand, if it means that somebody's coming into town and their kids need to talk to me about something, I'll make it work. You know, it's not common practice, but I can make it work.
So having been in this business since 1980, was it?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the industry, the profession, past, present, and future?
Well, I think on the industry and on our profession, I think we have as great a role in helping our clients now as we did in the past. And I think clients they're not getting the advice at the banking institutions, and they may not be getting the correct advice. They may be turning to the internet, but there's no back and forth conversation on the internet. You're reading information, and there's no one size fits all. Nobody's situation is cookie cutter. And so, you know, clients you have to know these folk. And as professionals, we do, to then say, well, you know, that makes sense for you, but it wouldn't have made sense over here, or it wouldn't have made sense for me, but it does make sense for you. And I think moving forward, I don't, the challenge I see in our industry as all of us get a little older is we're not developing new agents in the industry to the extent that we did when you or I came into the business. And I think the individual brokers, don't have time to do that. And the MGAs, I don't think, are doing it particularly. So, it begs the conversation about, where are the ones, who's going to take over in the industry per se, when the boomers start to retire or semi-retire. I mean, the beauty of this business is you can work as much as you want or as little as you want moving forward, as long as the clients are serviced. You don't need to keep growing. But at some point, it's the same problem as family doctors. We didn't train enough young family doctors to support the volume of family doctors, certainly in our community, that are retiring. And there's just nobody to take the patients. So there's 30,000 patients in this area that don't have a family doctor, because the medical schools didn't promote it and the government didn't fund it. It wasn't a particularly valuable profession. So I think if we need to do something better in this industry, I really think we need to be more focused on developing new agents coming into the business.
Thank you, Sue. Sue, how lonely has it been for you at times as a sole practitioner in the business, as an independent practitioner?
Lonely?
Yeah.
Oh,
Does it get lonely for you ever?
no. I have, again, if I have a problem or something I can't figure out, I have colleagues who run their own practices that do what I do, that I could phone up and say, can we go for lunch? I've got this case I'm working on. I can't figure out, I've got a problem. Or I've got my study group. I can phone Cindy or Michelle and say, and we do this periodically, we're working on something. Have you got any ideas about this? Or we'll send an email. I need information about XYZ. How can you help me? Or have you ever done one of these registered disability savings plans? How do we work with that? So I don't feel lonely, because I think I have enough resources that I can reach out to and ask questions. And certainly the companies in the past and the MGAs in the past have technical experts that we can go to for help. But I wouldn't say, I would never describe being a sole practitioner as lonely, for me anyway.
Okay, good. So what advice would you have for those who have less experience or are just starting in the business?
I would say get involved in your community or in something that enables you, or an association or Rotary or whatever it is, that enables you to be in a position of networking with other individuals in other professions. And I guess the other thing that I would do is make a list in your community of 5 or 6 lawyers, accountants, maybe a bank or a lender, because I don't do lending in our operation, that you can communicate with and share ideas and tell them about how you do your business and find out how they do theirs. So that when I just had a client the other day, unfortunately, he's going through a divorce, email me and say, do you know a good family law lawyer? I said, well, I can give you 3 or 4 suggestions, because I've spent time with various groups of these people, meeting them and understanding them, what they do. And I try in my referrals to sort of not match personality, but you know how there's some people is going to get along really well with a particular advisor, and somebody else that's not the right fit. And I think you need to build those relationships because this business is all about relationships.
So what led you to, I mean, the fundraising efforts that you've engaged in seem monumental and enormous. It must have brought you a great deal of applause and showed your personality. What drove you to do those things?
Well, I guess we'd always been taught in our family to volunteer. My grandfather on my dad's side was the chairman of the campaign and construction committee that built Lake Joe, CNIB's camp for blind children in Canada, up in Muskoka. And my great aunt was very involved in CNIB. My mom in Toronto read textbooks on cassette in those days for blind university students. She also took care of banking and shopping and stuff for a couple of blind women through the CNIB program. She was politically a volunteer in elections for various MPs and MPPs. So we we grew up with that give back to the mom was involved with the church women's groups. And so after I graduated from university, I was working and I had the opportunity to start helping on black tie galas for the hospital. And then I was on an endowment committee for the CNIB because they knew that, you know, I had the ability from the insurance side. And it just sort of evolved from that, Julian. And I guess what really affirmed me or confirmed in my mind the value of volunteer work and fundraising is that after David died, I was having some chest pain issues. And so they weren't fooling around. They wheeled me into the cath lab to do an angiogram. And on the wall, as I go in the door to the cath lab, is funds raised to renovate this catheterization lab from Black Tie Gala Committee Gala event 19, whatever the year is, 98, say. Well, I chaired that thing that year. And I thought to myself, all right, this is important. And this is something I need to focus on. So we did a number of galas over the years. And then, you know, when sort of galas faded out, I was asked to join the hospital campaign to rebuild our new Providence Care Hospital, which is rehab and physio and mental health. And that was in 2015. And so I agreed to chair that committee. But I've been involved in a Rose of Hope golf tournament for probably 26, I've been maybe 23, 4 years on that. We're finishing a pledge for $1 million in 3 years for an MRI at our new breast imaging center for women's health. And, you know, putting $387,000 into the MRI in 1 year is pretty substantial for one day event here. Is substantial. So I get great gratification from it. I enjoy it. I am committed to healthcare. We need to support our community in healthcare. And so it's sort of a natural part of my life. I explain it like a spider web where work and friends and volunteers and my family are all kind of interconnected, and everything supports everything.
Thank you, Sue. What a wonderful explanation. If you look back to day one and right now and you reflect on your career so far, because you got a long way to go yet, my question to you,
So.
what do you feel you've run towards in your career? What did you embrace?
I embraced the challenge to get my production to the top of the table level. and I embraced the challenge to be able to achieve the personal goals that I had in terms of travel, in terms of, the success of my children in their educations and in their careers and supporting their house purchases, and just to be able to be there for them, to be available, to be present in their lives. So I think those were the challenges.
And is there anything that you feel you've run away from?
I can't think of anything, Julie. And I have said I did make a commitment after David died that I would only do 3 volunteer projects at a time. And I have had to say no to people, and I don't like to say no, but this has allowed me to say I have a commitment that I made that I still hold, that I'm involved in 3 things, and I gotta get rid of one before I can take on something else. And I do regret sometimes not being able to help an organization, but at the end of the day, there's only so many hours in a day, and I can only do so much.
Good advice. And what advice would you give yourself if you were starting fresh again?
I would say network. Get involved. Learn, get your education behind you, and then continue to learn, whether it be through mentoring. If you could find somebody to mentor, that would be great. If within an office environment, if there were more than one broker, I think learning from others, you don't necessarily have to do it the same way, but there are skills that all of us can transfer that then those who are far more interested in technology could take on, but still have those people skills and those natural human skills.
Thanks, Sue. Here's a curveball for you. Who has had the most impact on you and your life, and why have they had that?
I'm going to say my parents, and they always supported me emotionally and financially too, but to do whatever I could do and do the best. My dad would always say to me, just do your best. I remember when I did join the insurance industry, I phoned them, said, Mom answered the phone, and I said, guess what? I'm joining XYZ Life Company, and I start on Monday, and I was all excited. And she said to me, you're not selling insurance, are you? And I said, yeah, why not? I said, it's great. So anyway, turn around a few years later, of course, they're both thought it was the best thing I ever did and bragged about it. And it was. It's been a fabulous career. It's been a fabulous opportunity. It's been satisfying. I have no regrets. But yeah, they've always been supportive, and they've always been there.
That's wonderful. Question, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you're dying to answer that I haven't covered in the questions I've asked you so far?
I don't think so, Julian. You've covered a lot. And
so have you, Sue Creasy. And bless you for sharing this time with us and injecting the future generations with so much excitement and so much guidance and advice.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I think this is a great program to, we all had the opportunities to learn from some of the greats in our industry that were when we were 40 years younger, and pick up ideas from those folks. And I think that this is a great way to allow individuals who may not get to conferences and may not get to places like KLU and Roundtable to have an opportunity to, again, if you listen to one video and you pick out one idea, it's been worth your hour.
Thanks, Sue, and over to Commander Lawrence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So we've known each other a while, and some of the things you've said really resonated with me. One of them is practice what you preach. And the other really was the KISS formula. We need to know it. We need to know an awful lot about it so that we can explain it to the client simply and they can make an educated decision, an informed decision, the right decision, as you say. That's a pretty complicated thing in a very simple phrase. Can you tell me how you've learned? I mean, your teaching background must be part of it, but how you've learned to turn tax, capital gains, things like that you talked about, into ideas that people can understand, even if they don't have a financial background.
Well, I think it's, you have to be able to express it and think of it as if you're talking to somebody who knows nothing about the topic, and to break down what they need to know to then show them how, for example, the tax calculation on capital gains works. And I go back to, I do a lot of drawing on paper and diagrams, and I'll make numbers simple. You bought the cottage for 100,000. You've got 100,000 of expenses in it. You sell it for 400,000. Your gain is 2. The taxable portion for now is 50%. And therefore 50% of this added onto your income is going to be approximately this much tax. And I was actually having this conversation at KLU. Have I got a few minutes to share this? With David Hall's son. And Toby Hall taught me, and I've used this in sophisticated cases and in simple cases, there's only 3 ways to pay tax, whether it's on a capital gain or on a death on your RSPs. You either borrow the money, costs you $1 plus interest. You use your own money, costs you $1, or you use pennies on the dollar, and that's life insurance. And if you factor out, you run an illustration and you say, okay, you're 50 now, and here's the premium. And if you live to be 85, it's cost you 35 cents on the dollar. Which option do you want to use to pay those taxes? Because the taxes have to be paid. And they look at it and they think, well, the cheapest one. And you don't even have to say it's insurance until you get the point across. And then you have the conversation. Well, okay, you're right. This is what life insurance is. It's pennies on the dollar. But so it doesn't have to be complicated.
As Ben Feldman said, money at a discount for future delivery.
That's exactly right. And we had the privilege of those Feldmans and those guys to listen to, right?
Yeah, the Ontario Sales Congress.
Yeah.
Feldman in a canoe with Ron Barber.
Yeah.
They get him to talk. Quiet little man.
Yeah.
Oh my, got a courier driving up. There you go. Well, we're approaching our time. Sue, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Julian, as always, you did a fantastic job interviewing. Coming up, in fact, we have David Hull, the elder David Hull, and Jeffrey Hull will be following him, and Julian will be interviewing for both of those. And following that, I'll be interviewing Bill Bell, and Julian will then be back with Rob Crowder as we get to June 23rd, and then with Chris Facey to end up June. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. We'll be here next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, as we always are. And we look forward to seeing you all. Thank you, Sue Creasy.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Lawrence.
And thank you, Krista Barzo, for helping us with technical services always.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.